Hi, Ryan.
Hello, Rachel.
How are you?
I'm feeling ill-equipped.
Oh, why do you say that?
Because I wanted to respond to everything you say with whistles, but I'm not a whistler. I can't really do a good whistle. I feel like if I practice and limber up everything, I could get some whistling going, but I'm just not, I don't practice. I'm not a whistler. I can't woof whistle at all. I can't do any of that.
Our characters just listen.
Yeah.
They don't whistle.
That's actually a weird downside of the episode. They do all of this like breakdown of their culture and like how they whistle speak, and they never themselves have to whistle speak.
Nope.
I didn't think about that when we were watching it at all. Now I'm thinking about it immensely. I'm like, oh, they didn't even do like we're undercover and we whistle speak back.
No.
It would have actually been nice of like, oh, Tilly's far away, too far for the communicators. I whistled to her. That would have been awesome. Oh, well.
Or if instead of Burnham using like a communicator to hear Tilly in the song, the Whistlespeak manages to penetrate through.
Oh, Rachel, what are we here to do other than to rewrite episodes of modern Star Trek?
We're here to talk about an episode of Star Trek Discovery. That's what we're here for. Many people are listening just to hear me suffer.
No, many people are here to listen to you describe why we're called Yum Yum Podcast. That's what they really...
part of my suffering, right?
No, that's a part of the joy. So why are we called Yum Yum?
We're called Yum Yum because it was a line in Star Trek Discovery seasons ago now from a character long forgotten, Commander Nandi.
I'm 1000% sure she's in the next episode, so she won't be forgotten. She will be remembered, and she is a pivotal part in the series finale. Jokes on every other character.
Forgotten by the fandom.
Not at all. Everyone knows her as Mrs. Yum Yum, which is actually your title. You're Mrs. Yum Yum. I'm Mr. Yum Yum. But we are rewatching episodes of Star Trek Discovery. It's its final season. And I'm just so keen to get into this particular episode, which...
Okay, great. Then I can introduce our guest.
Yes, you can.
I'm not... Oh, fuck yes. I got out of it. Welcome,
what did you get out of, Rachel?
Nothing.
What did you get
Nothing.
out of?
I got nothing. Welcome, Xhafer, who's here to talk Discovery with us today.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I look forward to complaining about the lack of whistling in this episode by the Discovery crew.
What should they have whistled?
Anything. Fucking anything.
Knowing them, they would have whistled some kind of pop song. Like, remember when Stamets sang David Bowie while drilling into Tilly's brain in season 2? That literally happened. That literally happened. Oh, man. See,
there's Black Eyed Peas in this show, right? In season 1?
Yeah. If they sang Let's Get It Started, but the original version of the song...
Oh, no. No. Oh, we don't talk about that anymore.
Oh, we talk about that all the time. You know what they say? You know what they say? Like 9/11, never forget. But, Xhafer, tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and your relationship to Star Trek Discovery.
So, I'm Xhafer. I am a co-host over on Who Are You?, which was doing Babylon 5 coverage about the same time that you guys were. We were about a season behind you. And I guessed it on the Day of the Dead episode, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Here, with my podcasting partner over on Who Are You, Laura. We're currently doing Battlestar Galactica, the Ronald D. Moore 2004 reboot. And besides that, I also co-host on another show called The Last Time On, which is designed solely to infuriate people who cannot skip episodes. The only reason that podcast exists. So yeah, you can find those on podcatchers. If you think I make good dick and fart jokes, if you don't, then I don't care. Sorry.
We know
but
that
yeah,
one of the creators of the show you listen to has listened to your podcast, so that's a mark of
it's
honor.
true. I have gotten yelled at by a show creator, so that's every podcaster's dream.
It's every podcaster's dream. We've also got the eye of a show creator. They were good enough to come on and talk to us about their show. I don't think JMS is going to come talk to us about his shows to either of us. I mean,
I'm good with that.
He will yell at us. He'll be like, "What the fuck do you mean Crusade wasn't great? That's like my dead child." He always compares Crusade to a dead child, which is always amazing. But talking about dead children, Xhafer, what do you think about Star Trek Discovery? What's been your history with it?
So I grew up with Trek. It was just my dad grew up with Trek, watching the original series with his father, and it was like a thing that my family did through my entire childhood. TNG started when I was a young child, and it was on every Wednesday, family dinner, Star Trek. It's what we did. And so all of that run from TNG through Enterprise when I was in high school and college, we watched as a family together every week. And so when Star Trek went off the air, I mean, I'm not saying that it wasn't. I mean, Enterprise got rough at the end. I think Enterprise came around. I think the last season Enterprise is the best season Enterprise. But
that finale, though, you loved it, yeah? You were fist pumping and cheering and saying, "Good job, home run, boys! I can't wait for you guys to explain who Agent Daniels is at some point. Oh, wait.
I'm actually kind of glad they did that. But anyways, so it's always been an important part of my life, and it's always been very familial for me. It always makes me think of spending time with my parents as a child. So when Star Trek came back, Discovery was the new thing. The Abrams movies had been kind of doing okay. I think Into Darkness come out by the time Discovery hit?
Yes, because Discovery started in 2017, I'm pretty sure, and that was like 2013.
Okay. Wow. Has it been that long?
It's been long.
Wow. Anyways, so it was like a chance to kind of reconnect with these childhood memories for me, is what I was hoping. And I remember, I went to a watch party for the first episode because it premiered on CBS, and sat down in a room with like 15 of my friends, and we all watched the first 2 episodes. And the first season of Discovery is okay. Like, I don't hate this show. I'm just going to say that now, generally speaking, because I'm going to say a lot of things about not positive over the course of this conversation.
It's a nice lampshade to put on at the start of everything. Guys, I don't hate it. So when everything I say sounds like vitriolic hate, it's not, because I don't.
It's not that I'm mad at Star Trek Discovery, it's that I'm disappointed.
Welcome to Yum Yum Podcast, where that's the sentiment exactly.
You've been second guessing yourself since that time bug came on board. That's not on you. Understood?
Got it. Okay, Ensign, what's next?
Last step, right? Bring it home.
We've got Discovery Season 5, Episode 6, Whistlespeak. Captain Burnham must consider breaking the Prime Directive when a local tradition in a pre-warp society threatens Tilly's life. Culber tries to connect with Stamets, and Adira steps up when Rayner assigns them a position on the bridge. Oh yeah, that did happen.
Rachel, this episode is jam-packed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot here. But mainly there's a lot of yum-yum moments. And since you and I are experts, I would love to know from you first, what was the yum-yum moment for you in Whistlespeak?
Tilly has a lot of lines in this episode, and a lot of them are yum-yum contenders. I would say I feel fairly confident in saying that, and I'm struggling because I didn't write down the she's the queen of something.
Endurance.
She's the queen of endurance. That's it.
And then she gives a little Ronald Reagan with the peace signs, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's my pick.
Why that one? Out of all of them, you said she has many lines. Some may say too many.
She does, and there is one line that gets repeated. But the idea of her being the queen of endurance and then thinking that that was going to be a fucking hilarious line that everybody was going to love, just like...
Well, the writers thought
this
that.
is the power of math, people.
If I had to choose one, it is also Tilly related. It feels unfair because she often is a character that exudes YYE, Yum Yum energy. But I cannot avoid it because there was a particularly good scene, or at least a well put together scene that allowed another character to shine. And Tilly had to do what Tilly often does, but a symptom of what we see in a lot of media these days, which is to have a dramatic scene, or at least a, narratively cohesive scene, and undercut it with a joke, or undercut it with some pithy statement. And it was when Michael was going through all of the fascinating xenoanthropology stuff that they have come to with this society that they're going to go down and meet and interact with. And Tilly just had to be like,
come in and
ruin the moment and just say like, oh, you can take the xeno out of the anthropologist, but you can't take the, no, I've lost it. And I lost it at that moment because why was that there? It's not good. It's a yum yum because it stands out as like, what the fuck was that even for? But I can't even get mad at Tilly because that type of joke, in quotations joke, we see in almost every movie and show nowadays.
Yep.
And I can't even be like, I have no tears to shed about it anymore, but I had to raise it as the yum yum moment of the episode because it was truly a what the hell was that? But Xhafer, what is your yum yum moment of this episode?
Well, we're all in agreement. Tilly had many moments in this episode, and I also picked a third Tilly moment here. When they are in the chamber for the sacrifice, and Dad is saying goodbye, and she hears the word sacrifice. The camera cuts over, and she like shoots her eyes up, and she's just like, sacrifice? After they've spent 40 minutes of this fucking episode saying goodbyes and talking about how they don't need to do the thing and making every single overt overture you possibly could that would tell you that this race ends in death without explicitly saying it. And at that moment, she finally realizes. And for me, that moment was pure yum yum energy.
I will say straight off the bat that when I did watch this episode the first time, I hated it. I loathed it. I despised it. It was my least favorite episode of the season when we were walking into this. I was like, oh, well, Whistlespeak, that's the worst one. I thought it sucked. But, shockingly, and people can see this in real time with our reaction, because Rachel and I have been filming our reactions to the last episodes of Discovery and putting it on our Patreon, but I shifted. I actually kind of appreciated some more elements of this episode, and I didn't despise it. In fact, I think it's kind of like how we were with Janal itself, in which I not to say liked it, but I didn't hate it as much anymore. But also, I found a lot more to appreciate within it, and especially after the last episode, Mirrors, in which that was a clusterfuck of unrealized, unfulfilled plots. This one is very bare bones. It's just a classic Prime Directive A to B to C to D with a bunch of extra stuff sprinkled on. That is just the case with Discovery, but this is a fairly self-contained episode, and I actually kind of liked it for that. But Rachel, what did you think of Whistlespeak? This is the one that you keep referencing as memorable episode.
I do. And I forgot that I did this for a lot of the season of Discovery, and I can't remember if I've mentioned it before, But after we watched them on IMDb, I would go in and rate the individual episodes. And I gave this a 2-star.
Mm-hmm.
I did not hate it that much on the second viewing. I was just like, yeah, it's shitty, but it's Discovery. So it's always going to be some level of shitty to me.
There's a bell curve to work on.
Yeah. But I was like, this did not make me angry. It did not make me apathetic. It did not, make me happy in any way. But it didn't, ruin my day like a lot of Star Trek Discovery episodes do for me.
Did it ruin your day that first time round, and how come it isn't this time?
I think on the first watch through, I was much more frustrated that they were getting close to actually doing something interesting. And on this view, since I knew what I was in for more, even though I didn't remember a lot of it, it didn't aggravate me nearly as much because it was just like, okay, it's doing just the bare bones of a Prime Directive episode. It doesn't realize what the implications of these choices are in terms of themes and, the lingering effects on this entire civilization.
It's memorable, at least, because you can say, Whistlespeak, oh, that was the Prime Directive episode, but what was Under the Twin Moons? What was that episode? We covered that one on the podcast. Could you tell me what it was?
Nope.
Exactly. You can't tell me. This episode at least has the merit of like, oh, that was the episode where blank happens, which is often a rarity for Star Trek Discovery. There's like maybe one or two of those a season where it's like, oh, the time bug episode. And you know what I'm talking about. Or, oh, the episode where they did the Prime Directive thing. Oh, yes. But, Xhafer, you have some opinions.
That stands out because this is the only one.
Mm-hmm.
There are 2 Prime Directive episodes in Discovery, and this is the only one with Burnham as captain. The other one is Pike as captain.
Yes. New Eden, which was often acclaimed as the best episode of Discovery for many.
I think it's a solid episode. Yeah. I remember it fondly. But I also remembered this episode fondly, which is why I picked it. And I hated it on the rewatch. I'm the exact opposite.
Reverse Uno card. Let's hear it.
So I remember thinking it's like, oh, this is the fun one with the Prime Directive, and they have to like come to a solution, because they come to a solution at the end that is not your typical Prime Directive, which is just the absolute coming clean. The like, yes, there's space, there's aliens, we're aliens. You can still have your gods, you can still have your religion, you still have your society. Maybe stop killing each other, that'd be cool. And just like figure out a way forward, and you're just stuck now. And most of the time we either get a big transitional moment of a society, like in the Strange New Worlds finale, which is also named Strange New Worlds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like that's like a transformational moment for that society. Or we get a like Who Watches the Watchers, which is the TNG one with like the proto Vulcans.
Yes. Or Insurrection.
And if memory serves. Yeah. Or Insurrection is a big change for the society. Who Watches the Watchers was like you're just going to have to do your thing now. And I thought this was interesting because it was kind of in the middle, is how I remembered this episode going. And then I watched it and I got so upset because they talk so much about how important the Prime Directive is, but they're also violating the Prime Directive like 5 times before the big Prime Directive violation at the end. It's like someone had the idea of the Prime Directive and didn't actually know what the Prime Directive was and made this episode, because they treat this episode like the Prime Directive is you can't give unadvanced cultures advanced technology. And that's not what the Prime Directive is. The Prime Directive is you can't interfere with the development of a society. And that would cover exposing them to advanced technologies, but it also covers a whole bunch of other shit that they just throw to the side for the sake of this episode.
We have to wait for him to leave.
No, you beam me in now.
You'll be revealing yourself to a pre-warp civilization.
I'm aware.
We're gonna have to answer for the Prime Directive violation.
And we will. We are not letting them die for no reason. If the Hellemnites can't maintain this technology, they're gonna get wiped out sooner or later. Either way, we have to do this.
Aye, Captain. Stand by.
I think let's just tap into something that stood out from the very beginning. Rachel, you had your finger on the pulse of this, which is the direction, the overall look, and there was a lot of choices made in this one.
Yeah, like when we started watching it, and it's like that. It's like, ooh, we remember that we have light gels.
We can flash them in the actors' faces.
I really liked this scene. This was very much for me a on-purpose callback to a lot of the motion picture era stuff, because they would always have like Kirk or Spock in front of a screen, and we would see their reaction to what they were reading much more so than what they were reading, and it would always flash those lights on their face for whatever they were looking at, and that was the only source of light in the scene.
And it's bright, psychedelic colors, rainbow effects. It's very specific.
And there are like other moments like that sort of sprinkled in throughout the episode, and some fun transitions that feel like they're in service of something as well. It's not like last episode where it's like, oh, Dutch angles,
spinning the camera.
We gotta do those. Oh, see?
There's a lot of old school sensibilities, I feel. Like, this episode has a lot of TOS in it. There's a lot of the original series you can point to as well and discuss like how they go about things, and just the, I guess, formulaic way, the simplistic way of getting into a Prime Directive story. But the director for this one, Christopher J. Byrne, he also brings that to the visuals a lot more while still having those modern flourishes. I really like the transitions. I thought they were very cute, and the way that the music would accompany them as well, because Discovery's music is often overpowering and intrusive, but I thought it was a lot more in the background and subdued, even with flourishes that are unique specifically to this episode. Like when we're on the planet, we hear this almost like Renfair type music, and that gives a sense of character to this civilization that we've never met before and will never meet again. Or you really liked, Rachel, at the end when Discovery was like going to fly off, we're on the planet looking at the tower, and it does like this dissolve to Discovery over the planet, and it had like almost this 1960s musical sting that popped up, and it felt very just of a different time than how Discovery usually does their transitions from scene to scene.
Yeah, like it felt like they thought it through in a way that they don't usually, because it was something more than just the spectacle.
There was a handful of really good transitions, which you brought up. The one at the end where the puzzle becomes the like eye of the planet was really cool. And I did do a little bit of research because I knew where I was coming, and normally I don't bother on my podcast. My podcast, lots more jokes. But I did do a little bit of research, and the director is a composer primarily. He does lots of assistant directing. He's done a couple episodes of Star Trek here and there, some other shows, but he is primarily a composer. And I actually went on his website and was reading about some of that too. And I think it shows that he got the closest thing we get to a music. I don't want to say musical because we can't, that means something else in Star Trek now, but with the theme of the music as communication that we forget about so often in this episode because they forget about it in the story. I think it's a really good choice because it's someone who really knows and cares about that, and it shows, because whenever there is the Whistlespeak, it's important and pertinent, and the choice to bring it out is always there, to the point where they break one of the fundamental rules of how the universal translator works. Because when we hear the whistle speak, we hear the whistling and the speaking over it instead of just hearing the words, which is how the universal translator always works. It white noises out whatever else and you just hear the language you're supposed to. So I really appreciated that choice to break their own technology and their own rules, assuming that he was aware of them, to bring that out more, because I thought it was a cool thing.
It is, and I didn't even clock that, like, their breaking of the usual way that I didn't think about it, but because I liked what they were doing so much that I wasn't hung up on, like, the technical lore details of this, the continuity, blah, blah, blah.
Like, I didn't feel the need to bring that up in their reaction because they sort of set that up as being part of the process when Burnham is listening to it and then explaining it when they're on Discovery. So the fact that they do the same thing on the planet, I was just like, okay, that's just the way that they're doing it for this.
And he's been, here since season 1, this director.
I did find it a bit weird when Burnham's just like, oh, yeah, the Universal Translator got it. It's just like, yeah, the Universal Translator gets fucking everything. Why is that?
Well, there was a whole
one
episode
time
of TNG.
in all of Star Trek it doesn't.
Yeah, that one time in TNG it was like, well, they speak in metaphors, so we can't really understand it.
But but like you still got the translation, but the translation didn't make sense.
Yeah, because they don't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is a lot to praise in the episode when it comes to these technicals. And, something I want to just, again, go into a bit more when it comes to these is when they shoot in the void space that David Cronenberg lives in, even that is impressive to look at, and it's just an empty white space with people standing in it.
They make it dynamic.
Now, something that I wish they would change is, could Adira please have a plot? Could Adira have any reason to exist in the show other than they are here?
But they bring up an idea. They have two scenes. And then it's resolved. Does that not count as a plot? Because Discovery thinks that it counts as a plot.
Most stories have like a 3-act structure or 5-act structure for TV, and they do it in 2. They have the first and final. That's it. They're like, here's the implication of what's wrong with Adira, and then the next scene that we see them in, they get a fortune cookie line from Rayna, and then everything's solved. And that's it. That's Adira.
You had a very similar experience last episode.
Hugh has that throughout the whole show, where he gets
it was more than 2 scenes this episode.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about Hugh, but Adira. Rachel, anything more that you do want to say about Adira?
No,
being very snarky.
Nothing more to say. It's just like, oh, they wanted to be on the bridge more. They're on the bridge. They question whether they should be on the bridge or not. Rayna gives them a pep talk, and it's just like, oh no, actually, I can do this. And it's just like, this feels absolutely no fucking different than Adira working with Stamets in engineering. It's just that they're on the bridge and Stamets isn't standing next to them, and Rayna is the one that they're bouncing off.
Adira has been demonstrated through a majority of the show as this cocky, self-assured character until there are episodes that say no, they're actually a nervous Nelly who is incompetent and insecure, and then they get a pep talk. It's inconsistent. The character's inconsistent. But what really drives me up the wall is, I'd say that this is 2 scenes. I'm incorrect. This story is the payoff to what has been 3 episodes worth of Adira feeling guilty.
About the time bug, yeah.
About the time bug and having been broken up with by Grey.
Sorry, it's so boring.
Think back, Janal was a setup to this. So it's like, oh, they got broken up with. They were so sad about that they didn't notice a time bug being...
got broken up with, not dumped.
Got broken up with. Yeah. Got shafted.
They got dumped.
They got pissed on by Grey. And then... They get a time bug put on them, and then the next episode is a time bug, and then the next episode after that is Adira saying, oh, I feel guilty about the time bug, and Stamets saying, nah, you don't get over it, and then this episode is Rayna saying, hey, it's fine, and then that's the end of it. That's 4 episodes. And yet,
that's the majority of the season.
You could boil down that entire storyline into 1 minute.
Sure, yeah.
You could boil it all down into 1 minute of screen time, probably, and it's as effective as it is spread across 4 episodes. But, Xhafer, what do you think about Adira And what do you think about like this specific way of writing these subplots in which it's like, well, we don't have enough time. The episodes are only an hour plus long, so we can only dedicate 2 scenes to them.
So, have you guys seen Battlestar? Have both of you seen Battlestar Galactica? Because I feel like we just talked about this.
Yes.
Because this is Hilo and Sharon on Caprica in season 1 of Battlestar Galactica, only worse somehow. We have 30 seconds. We have to progress this plot so we can do something with it later, hopefully. And here's the 30 seconds. Here's the minute. Here's what you get. Here's what you get. And there's so much of that in so much of this season and so much of Discovery in general. It's really part of their storytelling au revoir, where it's just like, okay, well, we saw a book for 30 seconds this episode, so let's make sure we give them a little bit at the end too. It's the reason why you've got what you call it, Culber Watch?
Yeah, Hudar.
Hudar, thank you.
There's been a lot of 2-scene approaches to things. Like Book gets 2 scenes in this, and Adira gets basically 2 scenes. Hugh got 2 scenes last episode with Tilly, and it's like throughout the season, it's been like that. And it's like, why bother? Honestly, like at this point, like why even bother?
I think it was a really heavy season for them. Not that the others haven't been. I think that they started to take a lot more responsibility, I think, for what they wanted their life to look like this season. I think that they started to adult a little bit more.
Are you a fan of Prime Directive episodes? Because
it depends on the episode for me. Like as a concept, I think that there's a lot of things that you can do, but I think that Trek has already done most of them. Like, they've done a lot of different versions of the Prime Directive episode. And this one is clumsy in the way that it does it. And as Xhafer identified before, they don't seem to understand exactly what the Prime Directive is, even though they're referring to it in name. They're only really acknowledging one part of what the Prime Directive does and not the rest of it. So like this, it's a Prime Directive episode, but it also doesn't feel like one at the same time. And there are plenty of ones that I enjoy a lot more. I love that Threshold sort of ends up being a Prime Directive episode at the end.
Yeah, an amazing episode to point to. What I find interesting about this episode is it asks without ever directly asking, does the Prime Directive matter if it's already been broken? Because that's the truth of this scenario, is this planet is this way because someone from the past had already tampered or bent or shaped the Prime Directive in a certain way, and now we are seeing the consequences of it on the long term. This is one in which the characters being so far in the future and a post-burn universe actually matters.
I think that this question is asked and answered by, once again, the Strange New Worlds pilot, which is the same kind of thing, where it was accidental exposure led to them fucking with a society they didn't mean to, which is why you have the moral imperative to come in and try and fix the situation from a Starfleet Prime Directive perspective. So I mean, that was, I get it. You have to have a storytelling device, and the Prime Directive being a incredibly strict rule, I think, is what makes it interesting to break and what makes Prime Directive episodes interesting in general, because they have attempted to say this is the way it has to be, and we always seem to find exceptions to that. But most of the time when we find those exceptions, it's for a good or a good reason. And the audience is like, okay, well, we bent the rules this time for the good of this society. Which I think is the best way to do a Prime Directive story, because if you don't, then it's probably going to be boring. It just won't be a fun story, which is why there's so many Prime Directive things that don't get shown on the show. I did a little bit of research. I have a question for you guys. I got 2 captains picked out right now, and I did a little bit of math and I did a little bit of counting, and I'm curious if you guys can name me the captain who has the highest percentage of Prime Directive episodes, and then the captain who has the most Prime Directive violations, including
And they're
off
separate.
screen.
And they're separate from
They're not the
separate
same
characters.
person?
They might be the same person, but
Is it
they're
Janeway?
not. I'll give you that. It is not Janeway. Neither of them are Janeway.
Okay, most people slam
Yeah.
Janeway.
No, my mind went to Picard. I don't know why.
It's easy.
So it is Picard.
Good.
Picard has the most off-screen Prime Directive violations. In the drumhead, the one that's all
McCarthyism.
yes, I didn't know if that's a relevant reference for you culturally.
Oh, yeah.
We understand history.
The fact that...
Well, understanding history, yeah.
I've seen movies. I covered Babylon 5.
Also, I teach... Like, I've taught the film Rear
Did you
Window
guys teach that in school?
over and
That's
over
great.
again.
Well, here's the thing is, we barely get it here. We don't talk about it in America.
because you don't like to learn
That makes so much sense.
because you
But
don't
yeah,
like to learn from your own history and the mistakes that your country's
100%.
made.
No, it's a huge thing.
I talk
And
about
so,
McCarthyism in English in relation to text almost every single year.
fantastic. That's so great to hear. Because in America it's just all like, and then there was the Trail of Tears. It was bad, and that's all you talk about it in school growing up. And like all of these horrendous things
'cause
in American history just
we
get
also do
completely
the Crucible,
glossed over
which
or
is
ignored.
McCarthyism stuff too.
Yeah, study the Crucible. But so you have the drum head in which shit gets
And-
fucked in real.
She gets fucking real, but Picard gets called out for having 9 Prime Directive violations in the last 4 years in that episode,
Good for him.
which is
Good
more
for
than
him.
any other captain has on screen, let alone the ones he also has on screen.
But
And the fact that apparently, like, they weren't interesting enough to have episodes about.
I'm sure if you count some of the ones we saw, they may have been in there. But it is this thing of like, yes, the Prime Directive episodes are mainly about how we're going to see them break the Prime Directive because that's how stories work. And it's the different flavors. This episode also brings in the flavor of spirituality and religion, which is not unique to the Prime Directive. We've seen that before. I mean, Who Watches the Watchers, where Picard becomes God, but like we see like, oh, because of this stuff that's happened in yesteryear from someone else who has installed these towers and now they've failed, there's now become this whole entire religious culture based around this thing that has come about because of them fucking around with the Prime Directive. Like that's the angle of this episode that makes it more than just an average one. And of course, that's an average thing you could see in a Prime Directive episode, but this episode firmly plants its feet in the ground and says, this is what we're exploring. This is what we're going to deal with. We're going to get into the actual minutia of this. Whether they do it successfully or not is something we can talk about, but it's not, we can't sit here and say that they don't claim that that's what they're going to do. That's very much like from the cold open, you go, okay, we're going to deal with stuff like this. And I really liked the scene in which Michael was breaking down the culture. Like, Michael's done research, Michael's using their
xenoanthropologist and being, like, scientific about it and laying it all out. And that's a part of why Tilly's fucking line at the end of that is so infuriating, because it's like, oh, there was almost a whole scene that I liked. And then Tilly ruined it all.
The character is a xenoanthropologist, which is, I think, a really cool idea for a main character, but it rarely comes up. It doesn't come to the forefront in the way that you would expect it to.
I mean, it comes up about as often as Picard's archaeology thing, I feel like.
That comes up enough. Like, that's a hobby of his. It's not his career.
No, but it was almost his career.
Yeah.
It's what he
And
would have done if he wasn't in command.
That idea does get played with more, but the fact that this is her background doesn't matter nearly as much as her being an engineer, because everybody in this show is a fucking engineer.
Another thing that I ponder and I've been asking this all season, but I really want to know what people's thoughts are with this episode, which is, why is Tilly here? Xhafer, what does Tilly offer to this particular away mission that no other character could?
I think if it's any other character but Tilly in that chamber, Burnham doesn't violate the Prime Directive. Maybe
Really?
Saru. Yeah, but I don't think she cares about anyone else enough.
Wow. Not even if it was Book?
Okay. I mean, I guess, yeah, Book. I was thinking the crew, but yeah, Book does go on away missions and stuff. I don't remember his status in this episode.
He is like, you have a personal connection with the villains, so we use you while you're on like parole for committing terrorism.
Oh, okay.
And also,
Yeah,
you have
it's
empathy powers. Use them, please. They do that a lot too in this season. It's like, you have empathy powers. Use them.
Yeah, it's just, I don't think that anyone else gets any of the random crewmen that they never bothered to develop enough to have a true personal relationship with her. I think she goes, well, Prime Directive says that the culture's more important. Sorry. But because it's Tilly, she has to be so steadfast because of their friendship that violating the Prime Directive isn't even a question when Rayner calls her out on it.
And so you're going to like that end point of like the believability that Michael would break the Prime Directive to save a crewman. But in terms of like the rest of like the actual beat by beat functionality of the character and what they contribute in the episode, like, does Tilly do anything that is specific to like, oh, this is why Tilly is here? Because, you know, in Star Trek, I love it when they have away missions and they're like, oh, and for this time, they're bringing down, you know, they're bringing down this character, and you go, oh, that's going to be cool. Like, hey, Dr. Bashir's coming on the mission. Oh, that's going to mean something. But in this episode and in many, it's just like, oh, and Tilly's here because she hasn't had much to do recently, it feels. Like, that's where I come in at it. Like, is that
There's
it?
a bit of that. Well, I mean, I don't know. I watched this in a vacuum because I watched this whole season a year ago or whatever, and I only watched this one. So that might be the case. I don't have that experience because I just watched it as just a single episode. I think part of Tilly's presence here is probably having to do with the casting and age of Rava, though, because she's doing this whole teacher arc, having someone who is school aged for her to interact with and help moves her story along a bit.
Rachel? We've been keeping tabs on that too. Do you feel anything about that? Like, is there validity to that statement? Because the episode does kind of gesture towards it.
Yeah, I think that's. But I'm wondering if it's a chicken or an egg. Like, is Raina that age?
Raver.
Mm-hmm.
Raina. I would love it if it was him down there.
Sure.
Can you imagine him doing the race? And he like smacks the ball out of their hands.
Doesn't he ride a motorcycle a bunch?
Yeah,
remembering that.
Because he's cool.
Yeah, that's only the first episode that he's in, right?
Yeah, only the first one.
Yeah, so the idea of it being like she's there to be paired with this young person who's going through this choice, but it's just like her dealing with that thing with her cadet feels weirdly tacked on. And it's just like, oh, whatever. Like, I feel like Tilly's here because people know Tilly.
Tilly, we don't have a frame of reference for who they are right now. Because could anyone tell me, what does Tilly do at the academy? Like, what does she teach?
No, I don't remember. Xhafer, do you remember?
General studies.
She's thinking about leaving the academy to take a position on a cargo vessel, and she wants to know if I think she should do it.
Huh. So what are you going to say?
Stay, don't go, I don't know. And she wants to leave at all. And she's not the first. We're not giving the cadets what they need. I don't know what the problem is.
Michael starts to notice all of the plants and mushrooms and shrubbery and all of the changes and mutations. And I couldn't help but be like, why isn't Tilly the one noticing this? They're the science person. Like, why can't you, what stops you from flipping this around to it being Tilly and Michael still doing the run? And Michael's still engaging in the culture. Like, if you flip it around where Michael's the one stuck in the chamber, it actually makes a lot more sense to me in terms of what we know of their character, their expertise, and what we get in this episode. But it becomes Michael has to unplug the thing because Michael's the main character. Mm-hmm. And it helps Adira feel like they did something.
Michael needs to have the most power in every single episode.
Tilly's here because of what reason? And it just gets into like these weird inconsistencies of the episode because we like the episode a lot more, Rachel. There's things to praise here, like when we get down to the culture, like when we get down to the planet and we see this society and the individuals and how they operate and how they just live in this hellscape environment.
The sound cure. That's a cool idea. It's communicated in a very show not tell way. Like they just start doing it.
And Michael and Tilly are having words to each other about like, oh, this could easily be cured with our modern fancy technology, just like that. But these primitive people, they won't be able to do it. So they're going to let this person die just on a whim because they are incapable of doing it. And then we see through a show don't tell sort of way how people, group societies can find their own ways of remedies and things without it having to be the same as the big, in quotations, civilized cultures. Like, I like that, as someone, from Australia who also has an Indigenous background, it's like, that's a classic thing as well. It's like, Aboriginal people knew how to do so much with the land and they knew how to do this thing and that thing. And the British would look at it and go like, oh, what the fuck are they doing? Don't they know that they could do it in big quotations, the right way? But it's just a different way of going about it. And I like that Discovery actually stopped and had a moment of recognition of that type of thing within the episode. It made this one-off group feel alive rather than just a thing of the week, a thing we must examine, a thing that only exists for the main characters to problem solve overall. But Xhafer, what did you feel about once we went down to the planet and we actually got a lay of the land of what we were going to contend with and the people living there?
This is my biggest problem with the episode, which is the absolute lack of the cool thing you put in it. You go to all this trouble, you spend this scene setting up the Whistlespeak, and you talk about, oh, look at their language. Oh, it's cool. They don't have any words for societal classes because those don't exist. That's fun. We're going to do these fun things with this fun language. And we get 30 fucking seconds of it at the beginning and then at the very end.
And neither Burnham or Tilly speak.
No one whistles.
Or engages with it, really.
Like they listen along and then they walk to where the sound's coming from. That's the extent that they actually engage with Whistlespeak.
You could replace it with drums. It wouldn't make a difference.
No, it wouldn't.
And the worst part of it is like there's a point where they really could. They're trying to catch up with a group of people and they're like, hey, you guys, and they're all like, why the fuck are these people yelling at us instead of whistling? Like they look weird and then they don't address it at all. Ugh.
It's inconsistent because they go 100%. To these moments of nuance, like their ritual, like with the bowls of water and the thing that they put in the mouth to dehydrate them, and they have like a fable.
Oh yeah, the warheads.
Yeah, and the warheads. They have a fable that relates to this, and like, oh, this is something I could genuinely see being a practice of a certain group. Like it's these little touches like that, and but then they'll throw something in there that completely undermines it. Like for instance, something that made me frustrated, like really angry, was near the end of the race when it's just Tilly and Rava. Rava drops the bowl. And we all know from the reactions and from context clues and from what we're watching, well, they're disqualified. They're out. And he says it like, oh, you're disqualified. But then it has to go that extra step further. Because you've poured your water out, you are now disqualified. And he has to explain it. He literally turns to the disciples and tells them. And it's like, out of anyone
that
knows.
Gives Tilly the idea to share her water.
But that's exactly it. It's only there. That line of dialogue is only there for us, the dumb viewer, and for Tilly to get a eureka moment. But it's not authentic. Then they just do other shit that just feels so stereotypical, like him waving his hands in the air and screaming at the sky about their religion. That feels very tropey. It feels very cliched for TV. Like you see that all of the time. And it's just, but like, Rachel, what did you think? Like, what were the moments that stood out to you of their culture and like the show don't tell and the things that they did feel the need to just rub your face in? Because it is inconsistent.
A moment that I want to pick up on that relates to this, but I want to hear what you two think about it. Because we get this moment with the elder who's reflecting on, oh yeah, like the last time that this happened, I was much younger and, my friend won the race, and I wonder what it would have been like if she was still here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then I read that as her being like, yeah, like, I wonder what would happen, but she did the right thing and she succeeded, and like that reaffirming her faith. But then Michael turns around at the end of the episode and is just like, that's proof
that not
that
everyone,
people are ready to not do this.
This one person that minorly suggested that they could be open to the idea is proof that all of society is going to turn on a fucking dime if you push it, if you spin it. Insane.
That's not the way that I read that interaction at all.
I'll launch in first. I always do this. I've never realized until we did this podcast that one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek of all time is Half a Life, the Loxana Troy episode where she falls in love with the man who has to commit suicide when he reaches 60. I always liked that episode, but I never realized until doing this podcast that I actually love it because it's like a touchstone for me of Star Trek stuff, because in that episode, he reaches an understanding through a whole series of scenes, by the way, not just like one line, and he tries to change his society, or he tries to get them to see it his way, and it doesn't work because no one is on the same page as him because they've grown up this way their entire lives. And it's a tragic story in which he then turns back around and he goes back to his belief system. Like, it's a whole thing about, like, we would like to think that one person could snap of the fingers change the way that everyone sees things, but that's not reality. And that's what I felt instantly with this scene of, like, just because this one elder knows the truth doesn't mean he's just going to snap his fingers and get rid of human sacrifice. And he expresses that concern. He actually says it.
And acknowledges that they've tried to end it previously and it didn't work.
And it's like, it's difficult. And Michael doesn't just say, well, that's your thing, it's difficult. She says, like, well, here's the solution to it. It's like, no, that's not the solution because it's so nothing. Like, what you said is true. That woman, she may feel that way, but she's, like, pretty ambivalent about it. And she's not an indication that all of... His daughter was willing to kill herself for this. And she's the young generation. So what does that say? Xhafer, any thoughts?
No, you've hit it. It's completely unrealistic to just be all like, oh, well, it's time now, so fucking do the thing, because everyone knows famously, that culture moves as fast as everything else around it. It's just, it's so frustrating. I don't know. Maybe it's just a knee-jerk reaction to the political situation at home for me right now.
Oh,
but
Xhafer.
I don't think society moves that fast.
Oh, it moves as fast as a bullet, depending. But let's get dark on the Discovery episodes, shall we?
This season has given all of us an intense amount of what I've written down as feels.
It wants to be sympathetic. It wants to give these people their dignity, which I appreciate. But then it falls into like a whole roster, checklist of like cliches, like the way that we all know that they are doing human sacrifices, and that rather the daughter, every time she speaks about the religion, it's that classic, like, I'm in a cult type acting where the eyes go big and vacant and the speech that they give is in this staccato type rhythm, and you just can't help but be creeped out by it. You can't help but be creeped out by it. And then the reveal is like, yeah, it is creepy to our sensibilities because they fucking killed themselves for this thing. And it's like, where does the episode want to cut it? Do they want us to look at them in this nice light where it's like, look, they're not as primitive and as backwards or as savage as maybe you would believe from just face value, but then they get all of this stuff in there that from a lot of people's sensibilities, you can't help but be like, oh, classic 101, spiritualism, stupid, bad, ugly, backwards. And where does Discovery want to land on it?
I am not a religious or spiritual person, so I don't really feel like I have the right to be offended by this episode. But I feel like if I was a religious person, I might be offended by this episode. I could see the potential there. I don't know. I don't think I have the right to get upset about it, but it seemed very patronizing to me. One, to be all like, oh, of course, these stupid religious people who still believe in God are going to go sacrificing. And then also well, now that you know that science is real, you're going to learn the error of your ways and give up your entire belief system, right?
But your belief system still exists. That hasn't been counteracted at all, except for the way it has, obviously.
Yeah.
But, like, often in Star Trek, either implicitly or explicitly, they identify how they worship technology. And Burnham is setting up this civilization to basically shift to that.
Yeah, breaking the Prime Directive.
Yeah, but it's just like, oh yeah, you thought it was the gods, it's this technology. So you really should be thanking the technology.
And you're going to have to learn how to fix it, so.
Can I ask a dumb question? Just because I feel like they would have acknowledged this. Maybe it's my lack of expanded Star Trek knowledge, right? But this race that did this, that broke the Prime Directive, were they a part of the Federation when they did that?
Yeah, he
Probably.
was a Starfleet guy. Yeah, Denobulans. They're
how long have the Denobulans been a part of the Federation?
Well, since the beginning, because Phlox was a Denobulan. That was Phlox's race.
Okay.
From Enterprise. So they've been there since the fucking start.
So there really is no fucking reason.
Well, his was an act of mercy still, like...
But to make these 5 towers and to... Like, it feels weird that the Federation didn't really have anything on this. Like,
well, because the burn happened.
The Denobulans managed to keep it a secret.
Well, we see in Star Trek that they do that a lot. Yeah. Sounds like just one dude. Remember that one episode of TOS where that one Starfleet officer made a Nazi planet?
It's a lot of work for one dude.
Yeah. Well, it's his expertise. He was also a brilliant scientist who hid a
but then they
clue
talk
to
about
God.
It as if it was a collective decision, because they're like, oh, maybe they empathized with these people because it was like their own planet, but these people are not advanced enough with their technology to save themselves in the way that the Denobulans did.
Yeah, he played God. And that's a part of the episode, but they don't really want to grapple with that.
But it feels like they flip-flop between it being all on this one guy and then them as a race, or maybe them working together. Like,
or Starfleet, yeah.
Yeah,
but it's
or
now...
like how much awareness. Like, that's all very sort of nebulous because it doesn't matter to the plot of this episode. but I feel like it probably should because it is a Prime Directive episode. And if they got into acknowledging the nuances of how it was broken before, why it was broken before, how much can they influence because of the existing break that happened.
What's their responsibility now? These are all things that a great episode could get into, but this one wants to slap on the back and at the end say, everything's good because now you, the one person, have broken your faith and now realize the truth of things and you'll sway society. Bye-bye. We'll monitor from afar, but it's up to you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Well, he's like the Pope, so I guess he's the neck. He can change the direction.
Sure you can. I never got that vibe.
No.
Also, their culture is so like made up of disparate tribes that it didn't feel like he individually could
Are they
shift
gonna
it.
whistle speak the gospel of Burnham?
Are they going to whistle speak the gospel of technology? But you and I have been covering Discovery since, the drop. What do you feel about how modern Star Trek delves into spirituality and what this episode offers up? Like, is this in line with it, or does it go against it of what modern Trek and Discovery does?
It does align with it because Discovery is interested in spirituality, not religion. It pays homage to the idea of there being something greater than what we can see and what we can understand, and that there's a bigger plan, or that there's something more and things that we cannot understand about the universe. But if you put into a structure and mandate things, then Discovery's like, oh no, not like that.
It doesn't want to touch that.
Not like that, because Starfleet and the Federation are what they use.
But they don't even want to talk about it on individual levels
No,
more.
but they don't really acknowledge how much they are using Starfleet and the Federation, because there's basically no difference in this show. But they're using that as a way to express and explore their spirituality, because we are going out into the unknown where no person has gone before, and we're understanding the world in a whole new way. And so you can't use a religion to do that, because you have to use science and technology, and you have to do it through the path of the Federation and stuff.
But then they are so heavy on bringing up the actual religions of Earth in this series and actual spiritual beliefs and God.
We've outgrown that. They no longer serve us. We are more than that.
Well, no, not truly, because Hugh has said, like, his family, this still matters for him, but he himself feels like he has outgrown that. But then he has, and we'll talk about Hugh in a second.
Characters, I'm not talking about humanity as a whole.
But I'm talking about, I'm talking about what the series is saying.
I was talking more about, the characters that we are following, and these characters are always shown to be right.
But it's weird because you have someone like Book who is explicitly religious.
Yep.
Like, you have characters
and I am
like
so
him.
annoyed that does not come up
at all
in his conversation with Hugh, which we'll get more into when we get into the Hugh dialogue.
But it's just this thing of, I find it difficult because Star Trek Discovery and Strange New Worlds and Picard bring up the vernacular and the aesthetics of faith, of spirituality, but it only feels just like that. They use buzzwords. Like, hey, we said the word faith in the episode, and we had the music play.
Why would there be any fucking depth in an episode of Discovery?
But it just annoys me because this episode grasps at the straws and then lets them go, because the elder, the leader, he actually has a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
He has a reaction to these things, and he is just tutted and told, don't think that way. But it then exemplifies what this season is about, which is this season is a treasure hunt to find God. We know for a fact now, the characters all know for a fact, there is a God race, and they're on a treasure hunt, and no one in the series reacts like he does about finding this out. Like, no one is shifted their opinion to what they were before, except for another character in the show's having a spiritual awakening, which doesn't even relate to the series, like to the season-long idea that is about shifting your beliefs on like how everything has worked before. But that is the way of things. I mean, Xhafer, what do you think about how modern Star Trek deals with its spiritual angle? Because it is much more pronounced in the current era of things, or at least for our eyes. What do you think?
No, I would agree that they're making a point to bring it up more. I mean, in TOS, there was a lot of stuff, but it was all like Greek mythology and dead religions for the most part. But there's bits and odds and ends and godlike creatures that were never really explained. And I mean, in TNG, you get like your Qs, right? And it never really feels grounded in a way that like there's someone who worships Q. Like there's I'm sure that's somewhere in there, but like that's not like a thing that we deal with in a serious manner. Which would have been interesting, but whatever. So we deal with it a little bit more grounded, I feel, in modern Trek, especially, not counting Final Frontier of everything. But it's just I don't know. It's not something that I really put a lot of attention on because it's something that's there and it's not for me. And that's fine, but it doesn't need to be. And that's not what I'm trying to say. But it's also something that I just don't have the like upbringing to appreciate.
But I don't think you need to. I mean, we both covered Babylon 5, and at the end of the day, we could talk extensively about what it thought about these exact same concepts, because the series or Deep Space Nine had things to say about it, while Discovery,
Discovery
it comes up a
to
bunch.
say. Yeah.
It comes up a lot, though,
Discovery as a
but it
show
has
nothing to say. Just generally speaking, that's my biggest problem with Star Trek in the last 10 years, is there's a handful of episodes that have something to say. And if I want sci-fi that has something to say, I've got to go watch Black Mirror. That's my option right now.
Beliefs can evolve. Denying that can cause almost as much chaos as the worst storm.
The Hudar, it's coming up. Beep, 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 beep. I'm hearing the Hudar. We can have a whole little side detour of a season about a character having a spiritual awakening, and yet it doesn't feel like it's saying anything about that concept at all, other than literally saying out loud, oh, so it's a spiritual thing? That's what Tilly said last episode, that's what Michael said the episode before, and that's what Paul says this episode. They just say, oh, it's a spiritual thing? And that's the depth. That's it. That's all you need to know. Oh, it's a spiritual thing. That's all.
I had mentioned at the top of the recording, maybe it wasn't on the recording, that I have a lot of caps writing in my notes. It is almost all for this. Huber fucking dies and is resurrected and waits 4 years to have a spiritual awakening that is completely unrelated to literally what must be one of the most spiritual experiences you could possibly have. Like, fucking really? You waited for this? You waited for a fucking Trill ghost to fuck with you to become spiritual when you went through that?
Well, when he went through that, what he was more prioritized about was if he should be in a relationship with Paul or not. It was a relationship drama instead of an existential. Remember the greatest line of Star Trek Discovery?
Existential?
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, they tried to say it was existential because he's like, I don't know who I am anymore. And that really was, at the end of the day, I don't know if we should be in a relationship. That's what it ended up being in season 2. But my favorite line ever is, we don't have time to discuss the metaphysical implications. That was from Lorca in season 1, and that's this show. We don't have time to do that, Xhafer. We don't have time to discuss the philosophical, the metaphysical, the existential. So Hugh's having a spiritual awakening, but it all starts, Rachel, where? Where do we start with Hugh? In a totally normal, not at all terrifying scene that's upsetting to watch?
His grief alleviation program where
Speaking
he's
of Black
talking
Mirror.
to an AI-generated hollow of his dead grandmother.
Yeah. But it's not creepy. The show thinks it's wonderful and sweet.
Hugh gets to talk in another language. He's connecting with his roots.
And he's getting to talk to someone the way he can't talk to anyone else on the ship.
Yes.
It's just, although it is just Zora, like we do make a point, it is just Zora putting on a different face and voice for him. That's awesome. Not at all scary.
Or at least,
not at all
at the
upsetting.
very least, she's running the program for him.
She's an extension of it. It's weird. I remember when we first saw this, my jaw hit the floor because in any other sci-fi show, including Star Trek, this would be pointed at as a troublesome thing.
This would be like Data making a child for himself kind of thing.
And there's a whole story about like what we do from there. Yeah. Or this would be a Reg Barkley episode. Like Reg has a connection to holograms that is fun to watch, but it's always made clear, even if it does things that are heroic, like when he makes connection with Voyager and communicates with them, that it's always implicit for the audience to know that this is not a healthy thing for him. No. That his obsessive-compulsive personality being tied so viscerally with this technology is upsetting. It has results, but to what end? For not only for the rest of the world, but him as a character. This episode and the series, they're not going to do that with Hugh. They're just going to say, isn't that nice?
Mm-hmm. I had completely forgotten that this was in this episode. I'd forgotten that this was in Discovery altogether. And it's just like, well, one, how is this a new technology when we see like 10 characters do this in TNG? Data does this with Stephen Hawking. Geordi does it with the engineer that he meets later. You know?
Another thing that you can explain away with, it was lost in the burn.
How do you lose?
We've done that like multiple times with things in this episode.
Yeah, and that's also so dumb because that doesn't make any sense. Why that's not something you would lose in the burn.
I would explain it like this. Those examples that you raised were the computer's simulation of real people, but this is they have scanned his fucking brain, Hugh's brain, and constructed the personality of his grandmother from his brain. So it's more intrusive.
But yeah, what about the Laura Barnes?
Well, that was Geordi making up Leah
from
Brahms.
Her diaries.
Leah Brahms.
Yeah, that's him making up a person, and then when we meet the real one, she's nothing like that. That was a computer just giving him what he was inputting, but that's...
like the building blocks towards this we've seen
and that was creepy. In the first episode, it wasn't seen as creepy, and then when she comes in, the whole episode is her being like, this is fucking creepy.
Yeah.
But this episode doesn't have a Leah Brahms come in and say, what the fuck is this?
It needs one.
Boy, did it need... You know what would have been great? If that was the moment Paul Stamets entered the story. He walks in and sees his partner doing this, and he's perturbed by it. He himself is a man of science who's always on the cutting edge of some new technology, but he sees this as an upsetting thing, and he's worried about his partner.
Yeah.
You could connect that back to how Stamets struggled to deal with the loss of Hugh when he died initially as well. You could bring that up. So it's not just Hugh being like, I died one time.
And you can have the characters connect more than just in a one-scene conversation about how both of them are falling into their work and into some new strand of technology to fill the void in their life. Because that's what Paul is doing throughout the season as well.
Then, because for some reason, like they give a reason, but it doesn't feel right. That Hugh is just like, hey, Stamets, come help scan my brain.
I need a neural scan.
Yeah.
I'm worried that there's
I need
effects.
somebody to help. So we haven't worked together in a while. So let's do it. That felt like the discussion that they had in the writer's room of why put Paul and Stamets in the same scene together for this.
Because we have never seen these characters outside of the famous toothbrushing scene in season 1 have a personal life. They only operate as two people who work on the same ship. That's it. We never get to spend... They say on screen, oh, let's go on a date. And we never see those dates. We never see downtime with them. So we rarely can get the opportunity for them to have this conversation in a way that, say, Keiko and O'Brien would have a conversation.
Yeah,
like I always think of
totally
Keiko and O'Brien
different.
having dinner. I always think of them walking walking around holding hands. Like this couple don't get that, so they have to have a way of like, hey, I need you to help me do a sci-fi expo dump scene. Will you come with me to the one set that I'm allowed to be in? Sure, I'll be there. And it doesn't feel authentic and real. It doesn't feel like it's a couple talking. It just feels like we raised this with Tilly. Why is it Paul when it could be Jet Reno?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it Paul when it could be Adira? Why is it Paul when it could be Dr. Pollard? Like, you could
Adira's
swap it around.
On the bridge this episode.
Yeah, but you could swap it around. The most important thing is, the note is he finally, Hugh, communicates to his partner. But the episode's not about how Hugh and Paul don't have a healthy communicative relationship. It's more just about, oh, so it's a spiritual thing?
Ugh, what a fucking just handoff. Just like, can't even be
It's just
bothered. Oh, it's a
nothing.
spiritual thing.
Like the two scenes that Hugh has with Book are also just nothing. Hugh being like, you can't do anything now, have some downtime. And then at the end of the episode, Hugh finds Book playing a video game on a shuttle, basically.
On
Oh,
a
yeah,
ship,
he's
yeah.
playing the Legend of the
Feeds him.
Rangers game.
I wish he was, buddy. I wish he was. I wish he was sitting there kicking and screaming. Ah! Oh, boy. But here's the thing. They try to connect it, Rachel.
They do. And it's fucking annoying that they don't let Book talk about his religion and spirituality in that scene.
Or his culture and how he has lost his family too.
Yes. Like all of those things are points where it was like, why is he not saying any of this?
They make it that they could because Hugh literally walks in with a plate full of food that is special to him, ties into his family and his culture. And Book could connect with that because he has things like that in his life. They could do something, but instead it just boils down to, hey, Doc, what's wrong? Sounds like a spiritual thing, huh? Like it's the exact same conversation, but now it's Book's turn to have the conversation. Except for they say it more solemnly, while it's shown to me that Paul, although caring, is still inept because he sees it so like black and white, while Hugh's trying to explain that this is a very grey area for him.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to
And
feel.
then at least Hugh does acknowledge that, oh, I don't think Paul really got it. Couple of small things that I want to note now. They've taken back the husband title.
Yeah, they used it one time and now they're just back to partner because in the first few seasons of Discovery, the writers made a big point like they aren't married, and then randomly in season 5 they're married and now they're back to partner. It's just a very weird thing that the writers cannot decide on for these characters. I don't know why.
It feels like a goof.
It feels like how they never really understood why they couldn't make Hugh Culber the chief medical officer.
Yeah.
Why couldn't he just be that?
He's the other one that
He's
I
a
want to bring
commander.
up is that he beams down. He's the one that's there helping Rava.
Yeah, because you have to make it feel like his story connects to the other stories instead of it just being this thing that's hovering to the side. You can't say that they didn't connect because he literally enters the other plot and he is the tail end of a spiritual awakening conversation. So then, see, Xhafer, we can't wag our finger because they literally connected it.
So it's a spiritual thing?
I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
The biggest question. We'll move into our ratings, which is Yum and Yum Yum, but I think we should answer this and then give our ratings. Is this the worst episode of the season? Is this as bad as it's rated?
No, like I was hypothesizing why this episode is so lowly rated. And I think it's because it fails to cater for the two major audiences that it has, which is the people who enjoy Discovery for what it is and the people who wish Discovery was more like old Trek. because it doesn't succeed in being an action-packed romp
with the
fun time
that gets into the mystery box of it all. Yeah.
Is more what like pure Discovery fans would want.
Seem to enjoy.
And it doesn't get into the implications of anything in a meaningful way. It pays lip service to some ideas, and it just brings up more questions and complications, which would annoy the old Trek fans. So I think because it's a united front of disdain, that's why it ends up falling to the bottom. But I did not hate it as much as some of the episodes that we've watched this season.
What do you rate it?
I am struggling because it's still not good. But on the curve of Discovery and on the curve of this season, it is a yum yum.
Yum yum.
But like, why is it so downtrodden? Like, I think back to when I saw it, I just thought it was very after school special. It felt so small scale. But now looking at it again, I like that it feels self-contained, that it's a one-off. Like, this isn't going through the usual motions of Discovery that we hate, like long extended action scenes or people crying constantly or, you know, gotta feed the season-long mystery. Feed the season-long mystery. Like, it really is subdued in those things. But for me, I'm going to give it a yum yum.
Yum yum.
So I said that I remembered liking this episode more than I did on the rewatch. And this conversation over the last hour and a half, whatever it's been, has really made me think that I think part of that reason is because when taken into context, when graded into the curve with the rest of this season, I think it probably is a stronger episode than I remember. The stronger episode that I remember it to be, rather, than the one I watched. Because I'm looking over season 5 right now.
Weaker.
For sure. 100%. In isolation, it's weaker. Exactly. And so I think because of that, if I'm grading on a curve, I would default to my feelings before watching it in isolation, which would have been a yum yum. But in isolation, not graded on a Discovery curve, it is definitely a yum.
Yum.
We have to know what we're talking about next time on the podcast, Rachel. Do you remember anything about the next episode other than I said that it has naan in it?
Oh, is it the Seed Vault?
No, that was season 3. We actually already reviewed that episode with the Seed Vault.
No, I thought that they'd go back to the Seed Vault.
I think we already did that in season 4. I'm pretty sure. No, the next one is, what is this? Egra, which is the blood bounty that the Breen have.
Oh, the Breen come back. Well, we get introduced to the real antagonist.
Well, Rachel, remember at the end of this episode, the thrilling cliffhanger to get us to the next adventure is, some other ship found Mole and Locke. Off we go! So the next episode is about that. With Mole and Locke in custody, the Federation is pulled into a diplomatic and ethical firestorm when the Breen demand they be handed over. Meanwhile, Book looks for ways to help as Tilly, Adira, and Reno work to decipher the latest clue. Isn't that? That sounds exciting. A little bit of a diplomatic incident. I wonder if Saru's going to be there because he's a diplomat nowadays. I wonder if Rillick is going to be there. You know, the president of the Federation. I'm sure she'll be there. All of those great characters. I know Naan's there. You know, great diplomat Naan. Xhafer, I didn't ask you this. How do you feel going back to BSG and you now see so many actors that are in Discovery?
It's been fun. Just like, I don't know. I'm getting a real hit of nostalgia, much more so than I got going back to Babylon 5, because I had just done a Babylon 5 rewatch, wrapped that, and then started the rewatch podcast. Battlestar I haven't seen in 20 years. And so every time someone that comes on that did something else later, I'm like, oh, it's blank. Like every fucking episode of Battlestar Galactica, I feel like I'm saying that. From bit characters in the background to more prominent players who kind of launched their career through that show. So
it makes me think of how productions have now tended to lean more and more and more and more to Canada.
Oh,
and
yeah, like the Vancouver crew. Yeah.
Yeah, and you look back at BSG and how many Canadians make up that show. But back in the day, you probably didn't even notice that or think about that. But we live in a different TV landscape in which we're no longer getting like your traditional LA character actor. Now we're getting the guy who plays Raina. Mm-hmm. Now we're getting the lady who plays Rillick in this show, who was in BSG as Boltar's lawyer. Boltar's prosecutor in the season 3. So it's like, that's kind of fun. But I just want to ask, because Raina didn't get anything to do in this episode, but he's the slimiest Cylon in BSG, and I just wanted to at least acknowledge, like, you do a show where he is the sweatiest man ever, and in this show, he's a cool cat. In this show, he's a cool guy that you think is awesome and badass. And you're like, I would watch his show. But then in BSG, he's just a pervert, a religious pervert. But thank you for being here, Xhafer. Could you tell us a bit more about yourself and where people can find the podcast, what you've got coming up, what's going on?
Yeah, so like we said, we're doing Battlestar Galactica over on Who Are You right now. I mentioned I have a co-host there, Laura. If you're interested in our Babylon 5 coverage, you can go listen to that entire back catalog. We covered all film media for Babylon 5 that's not fucking Argonauts. What is it?
Hypernauts.
Hypernauts. I was very
the
close.
The gloose is loose.
I had to give you a chance to say it. That was the podcast. It was fun. It was kind of a concept podcast where Laura and I got to know each other. Our first episode was like the second conversation we ever had. So you get to know us as we get to know each other as we rewatch a show that we both remember fondly from our childhood. And then we're doing Battlestar Galactica. We're wrapping up season 1. I don't know when this episode airs. In terms
you'll be done with season 1 by the time this comes out, and on to the glorious second season, which many people claim to be their favorite, but will it hold up to you? Who knows?
I am optimistic. So yeah, you can check out that there. And then I have another podcast, Last Time On, where myself, my co-host Ben, and then our co-host Victor, who is Dominion Meeting Television, the meme guy on Facebook. If you do Star Trek memes, we pick a show that the three of us haven't seen. We watch the pilot, we roll some dice, we skip that many episodes, and then we try to figure out what the hell happened last time on. So you can listen to those anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's really all I got going on.
You're going to cover Outlander soon, right?
We honestly might do Outlander as our next show. That is, I mean,
Rachel's watched it.
Yeah, like the last. I'm pretty sure it's the last season is coming out in a couple of months.
Oh, it's not done.
Yeah, no, it's going to be done. It's been going on for a decade plus. It's been.
We'll wait for it to finish.
No, you do it now.
No, we got to wait for it to finish. That's one of the rules.
For context, which is for Kings, I informed Xhafer on the podcast, because I did a guest spot, that Ronald D. Moore is the showrunner of both For All Mankind and Outlander. Also, I found out one of the recurring writers on Outlander is Ira Stephen Bear, so that's fun.
That's fun.
Because Ronald wanted to bring someone in. So he wrote I think 10 or so episodes. So that's weird and fun. But everyone, you can find us on social medias and all the podcasting sites under yumyumpod or yumyumpodcast. We are posting on there regularly. We have a whole slew of content available for you to consume and to eat and to put into your veins. We have so much on our Patreon, including getting these episodes early, as well as our reactions, and we talked about the Section 31 movie, so if you're really hungry to hear us talk about how awesome that film was, such masterclass of filmmaking, it makes Wrath of Khan look like baby make it look like a baby, goo goo gaga, crawling on the floor, shitting its diapers. You can hear us talk about all that stuff. Xhafer, one final question for you. Who should have said yum yum in this episode and when?
Oh, well, I mean, all the yum yum energy we found in this episode was always Tilly, so it had to be her, right?
Do you have a moment where she should have said it?
No.
Wow, you're so unsure. I would have said when she won the race and she just threw her hands up at me and said, yum, yum.
Yum. That could have worked.
When she drinks
she drinks the water. She's so dry. Yum, yum. Yeah, that would have worked.